I always thought that Australia started favourites in their series against South Africa, and that's in spite of having the most fragile top order that I can remember in any Australian side. I mean, you take out Warner and you take out Smith, you've got Bancroft, not quite sure, it's just sort of starting out. Khwaja hasn't become the player it could have been. Sean Marsh has been here, there. Mitch Marsh is just starting to find his feet at this level. Tim Payne is not quite a Gilchrist. I mean, that's unfair to anybody, but Tim Payne is coming back as well, and that's the top seven. And yet, I thought they started favourites. That tells you a little bit about what was once such a great series. And so I believe Australia are defined as much by Smith and Warner as they are by their bottom four. It's the best bowling lineup in world cricket. And when you have that, it often overcomes deficiencies in batting, but they do much more. Each of those four is capable of putting together a partnership. And you see the difference in that first test was what the last 5 wickets did for Australia and for South Africa. South Africa just got blown away and Australia hung in there. The fact that the bottom 5 took them to 351 was a turning point, but they also added another very valuable 70 runs that increased the burden on South Africa in the 4th innings run chase. 8, 9, 10, 11 are doing a fantastic job for Australia. But what about South Africa? I think the reliance on AB de Villiers is now becoming far too much. We saw that in the series against India, the 2 games that South Africa won, it was AB de Villiers who turned things around. And now even here you see AB de Villiers doesn't produce a partnership, doesn't produce a telling performance at the top, and suddenly that top order looks very, very fragile. I know Markram got runs at the end, Quinton de Kock's come back into a bit of form, but that South African batting is now defined more and more by AB de Villiers, especially because there is so little down in the bottom 4 or 5. There's another major problem with South Africa. If you look at the top 6 teams in international cricket today playing against the top 6, then South Africa's opening partnership is the lowest. They only average 21. In their glory years, South Africa had Kirsten and Gibbs. I don't want to go further than that. Then they had Smith, who had a good partnership with Neil McKenzie. Then again for a while with Alvaro Peterson. And all of a sudden there isn't an opening partnership. And that brings me to problem number 2. A player that I just adore, a player I've enjoyed watching greatly, and he's not pulling his weight for the moment, and that's Hashim Amla. Now you break up Hashim Amla's career from say 2014 to now. Look at his numbers pre-2014. Average of 53.9 from 120 innings, 21 centuries. He's getting a century every 5.7 innings. Hashim Amla is a top player. Then see what happens after that. An average of just 35.87, and we're looking against the top 7 teams, just 300s, and he's getting 100 every 16 innings. Hashim Amla isn't that player who was sort of the bridge between the openers and the middle order, and was this great support for South Africa. And I think there's major trouble there. I also think that we're seeing the tail end of a very, very high quality South African side. I think 2019 is going to be a watershed moment for them. I don't see AB de Villiers playing too much beyond that, not Hashim Amla. Dale Steyn is virtually gone already. Morne Morkel has said goodbye. I don't know how much longer Faf du Plessis, Imran Tahir, Vernon Philander are going to continue. And I think post 2019 we'll suddenly see a completely different South African side. And they'll have to be built around Aiden Markram, who I think is going to be a really good player for South Africa, Kagiso Rabada and Quinton de Kock. But you look down their domestic cricket, you look down their first-class structure, there isn't a lot. And so I think South Africa post-2019 is a team that's going to struggle greatly. I'd like to see if they can come storming back into the series, but for them to be able to do that, people other than AB de Villiers have got to score a lot of runs, and they've just got to have someone to run through the second half of the Australian batting. I still think Australia are favourites to take the series.